Hello, everybody. It's Legal Man. I'm going to make a show. I don't have a great intro yet, but because I'm still trying to work on my video skills. But I saw this in a tweet, and I actually put it up on my Twitter. And I know a lot of people inside Patreon don't go to my Twitter, or they've been banned because they misbehaved. But this was such an interesting site. I thought I would do a little video on it. We go through some of these graphs and charts they've got because they're just, in my opinion, they're so powerful. And I just did that show about how they wreck the culture and the society from 1960 to the early 70s. And there's other things they did, but it was very, very concentrated right then. And I thought that it would be helpful to see how they've totally and completely screwed us since then. The website, you can see, it's WTF1971.com. And I think it's like basically a financial thing that's trying to sell you Bitcoin, but it doesn't matter why it's there. This is a combination of different kinds of charts. I've looked at many different versions over the years. Not all of these, but it's so nice because they've got a lot of them here together. And a lot of them don't even end in 2020. They end in like 2010 or 2012 or something like that. But the direction has simply skyrocketed up since then. And if you just look at this very first one, I mean, it just shows you everything. We went off the gold standard in basically 1971, the middle of summer or something like that. I remember I was camping with my family. And when it came out, I actually saved the newspaper for a long time. Nixon takes us off gold standard or something like that. I knew it was a big deal at the time, but I didn't really understand it. And see, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s as a kid. And so I was learning all these things that none of them applied during my actual lifetime. I was learning rules and principles that applied in the 50s and the 60s. Just times before I was actually born and growing up. And certainly not completely outside of the time when I would actually be a working adult. And I had no idea what this was going on because, of course, my education completely sucked. I went to government schools, and my folks, they're well-meaning, but they didn't understand any of this stuff like most people. They just had no clue about what any of this stuff really meant. And the interesting thing I find about this way they've completely screwed us is that everybody talks about Reagan, how great he was. And all. Reagan sucked. It was under him that everything became financialized, totally and completely financialized. The entire economy has become financialized, and it's unhinged from any kind of reality because the financial system itself is unhinged from any kind of reality. And this is all done as a plan in order to screw average people and to benefit the people at the very tippy top massively. Because the entire system is basically a scam designed to do usury. It's all built on usury. People just accept usury because the entire economy, our entire culture now, being so materialistic, is based upon usury. This concept that was illegal, outlawed by most cultures for all of history. And the fundamental reason it's outlawed is because it's totally unnatural. The idea that money somehow grows on its own was considered by all the ancients and most civilizations to be unnatural because money is just a made-up thing. It doesn't grow like that. You're supposed to work for money. You're supposed to work for a living, but no longer. See, once they take it off, then the people who don't work for a living, who simply use this usury system, this fake banking system to buy all the real wages and profits and the people and their time and all the materials, that all goes away, and they can just use this fake system, and they can just get richer and richer and richer while the people who actually have to work each day get screwed over and over and over again. And all of these charts show that just again and again. This one right here, the very first one, productivity has continued to increase. That you can see right there where the gold standard was taken off. Compensation has basically remained flat. That's what's happened. Look at this one, real GDP and wages. Okay, real GDP keeps climbing. Look at the actual wages at the bottom, real median wages. Totally flat to down for the last 50 years. Look at all that. Look at wage and inflation and everything else. I mean, look at that. This is why everything's screwed up, see? This is why. They totally reworked the society in the 1960s and early 70s with all this miscellaneous shit, and they're bringing in a replacement population that's way easier to control because they're coming from circumstances that suck even worse, okay, than what they subject them to in this country. And so this place seems like a bounty of freedom and everything else, but it's not. They screwed everybody, and it's that they talk about the greatest generation. The greatest generation is the one that allowed all this. They allowed all this, and so I don't blame it on them, but just stop calling them the greatest generation. First of all, most of them were drafted into World War II. That's not to denigrate the fear and the danger they took. I get it. It's just to show you that the government itself is trying to give credit to a generation that was drafted into the war. They wouldn't rush down there and volunteer. It's ridiculous. But look at this one here. Income gains, see? This just shows you. And so you can see this one doesn't actually even end in 2020. And it's just going through the roof, that 95th percentile and up. See, they're just taking all the money now. And the average people don't get anything. And it was climbing for everybody evenly before that. And then it split away. Just like the CEOs and everything else. They all just make all the money now. See, the people are just screwed, and the people are still running around arguing about red versus blue. Here's another one, top 1% income earners. Look right there at the yellow arrow. See, it had been climbing really nicely for the bottom 90%. And look at that bottom, that red one is the top 1%. And I can assure you, again, that one ends around 2010. That thing has just, again, skyrocketed. And that's the deal, because everything's fake now. See, everything's a scam. Everything's a financial scam based upon access to the Fed window and simply government scam deals. All these companies are total bullshit. They were all paid for by government money and everything else. General Motors is dead. Things that actually make things, they're all dead. It's all just a bunch of data collection horse shit now and fake money games. Here's a decline in wages, straight down. Income concentration. You can see, again, it's going down for the top 1%, the top 0.5% in 1970, immediately starts climbing again. Look at those numbers. And again, that thing doesn't even go all the way through 2021. Just completely skyrocketing. All these things are the same, see? Black income. It's climbing really nicely. Really nicely. And then what happened? Now it's just flat to down. Slow or no progress. Real GDP versus male income. This fits perfectly with the show I just did. So they're destroying the family. The real median income for these males. See, it was climbing nicely, and then it just completely and totally flattened out. Because all the good jobs are just gone. There's no real jobs anymore. It's just a fakery now. It's all bullshit and fakery, just given to the very top people. And you can see real GDP is going up. But the males aren't getting it because the entire concept was to break the family up. Completely break the family up. Create two workers. And here we go. Female versus GDP. There was no break in that. See? No break in that. Why? Because they wanted to drive these families apart. Create dependency with these single moms and all this other stupid shit they've created with the show I gave you before. You can see here exactly it. Female income climbing, male income flat. This is why the families can't stay together. You can't have one income earner because of all these different numbers heading up a family. And of course, they've denigrated that so badly, and they try to make it seem like what the only thing women should really be doing is trying to get a job and be a working woman, a professional, and all this other crap, and just constantly degrading the idea of raising children and being a mother. That's just all been thrown out the window. So look at that number. So some of these charts I don't think are great because, home inequality. And, it's hard to really, who knows what that one really can mean. And this one's silly. Cost of living was interesting. I looked at a couple of these. New house, $25,000 in 1971. $320,000 was in 2020. And of course, it's just skyrocketing. Anyone who knows anything about real estate now sees it's just skyrocketing. Average income, now it's $32,000 roughly. I looked it up. So you had what used to be about 2.5 times your income to a house is the kind of thing. Now it's 10 times. 10 times more to buy a house. New car, I looked it up. A new car's it's right around $42,000, I think. So it's a little more than 10 times the $3,500. So everything's gone up by 10 times except your income. Your income's only gone up 3 times. Rent, I looked it up, same thing. It's about 15 times higher. Harvard's about 20 times more. It's about $52,000. Movie tickets, everybody knows, $11-12. Gasoline, everybody can guess. Again, same kind of thing. 8 to 10 times, maybe more, depending on the state. All these things are the same. Say they're all the same. They've completely screwed you. And look at inflation here, 1913 to 2015, and you know what it's been doing since then, right? But look at these numbers. Total cumulative inflation of 300% since they brought the fucking Federal Reserve in and started scamming everybody with that stuff. See, and that was a big scam itself. If you took the numbers back even further, as I've told people, in most times of boom throughout history, there was deflation. Your money would be worth more the year after. Every year, your money became worth more because it was real money, something real. Now it's fake. And now, once it became totally unhinged, it went from 300%. It took from 1913 to 1970, it became 300%. And now, just to 2015, it went from 300% to 2,300%. And it's just skyrocketing from there. It's because we're totally unhinged. So the value of the currency, anything you're getting paid, it's just going down and down and down. There's another one, Consumer Price Index, same kind of thing, just skyrocketing. Look at that break right there, that line, 1971. Look at that. Again, that's ending in about 2015 or something. That thing's just, again, straight through the roof. Same thing here. All these things just straight up. New York house prices, same kind of thing in these different areas. You can see the bottom two are median household incomes in different cities. And you can see how it just totally disconnects, making home prices totally unaffordable to most people. See, a lot of the people who are just kind of young today, they'll never be able to own a home. This is all planned. This is what they want. They want to drive you into these 2030 agenda cities where you can't do anything but live in some kind of BlackRock-owned, government-owned, social credit-driven shithouse apartment. This is the way they build all this junk. They brought out that stupid Sex and the City show, glamorized the slut life in New York City and living in these shitty little houses. That's what they're trying to drive everybody into. There's plenty of land. Anybody who's gotten in an airplane can see. Because most of the land's empty. It's just owned by all these rich people in government. They've got it all locked up. See? Got it all locked up. Sales price in houses, again, it really wasn't. I didn't find it that helpful. This was from Australia. The place must be based there. Again, showing the same kind of thing, percent of mortgage payment income. So just the percent you have to pay it was going in the right direction, right? And then 1970, it all starts going in the wrong direction, driving it right back into interest payments. Most of these mortgage payments, see, it's just a giant real estate scam. I made that show about the lifeguard and how California is just a giant real estate scam. If you just did this only for California, it'd be even more insane, crazy, and outrageous. See, but it's costing more and more, a higher and higher percentage of people of their household income to try to pay a mortgage. And it's just getting driven out of reach. And that's because they can just simply buy the stuff with free money. See, they don't have to work for it. People at the top just get handed all this money, these free deals, insider deals. It's all a deal. That's all it is. Most of the stuff is all scams. Public markets, just shit. They're all garbage. It's just people they just can't believe it. Gold reserves, of course, nothing. There's nothing there. It doesn't really matter. Inflation, who cares? I mean, we already know that. People looking for inflation adjusted on Google Books. Well, there was no Google Books back there, so it's really I mean, trying to draw currency crashes. It's all totally different now. See, now that they have full control, currency crashes are very, very different, especially once it becomes more digital. See, back there, and they couldn't just print the money up. Now it's all just digital. See, the money would have already collapsed in 2008. If you didn't have computers, it would have already collapsed because there was no way to print up enough money. They would have had to create like a $10,000 bill or a $100,000 bill, $1 million bill kind of thing to send them to banks with the amount of trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars they just create out of thin air now. So a lot of this currency crash is just, they don't really apply all the same this kind of thing, banking crisis. They're just trying to draw generalizations from stuff that I don't think really works. I mean, of course, all this stuff is fake. And once you go into fake digital, it's just a different situation from fake paper. It's just different. And that's why people want to say, oh, the Weimar Republic, watch it, oh, and they're praising the wheelbarrows and this, and look in Venezuela. We're not going to get to that point. Not in this country. It's all going to be digital before that. And once it's digital, then you're not going to be able to see any of this stuff. And it's not going to appear. Here's the federal debt as a percentage of GDP. These are just estimates. This estimate's way under, preposterous and absurd. First of all, GDP is a massively manipulated number. Same with inflation. They they pull out certain things they need and don't need to try to make inflation appear much lower than it actually is. So these numbers are actually all worse than they appear, because all these things are manipulated federal numbers they've gathered. Gross federal debt held by the public. Again, just a load of shit. Nobody knows how much debts we're really carrying. Nobody knows. They could be faking it all up. No one has the slightest idea what's inside the Federal Reserve. Here's the U.S. national debt. Look at that. 1971 is the arrow. Look at that. And trillions of dollars. Linear scale. Look at it. Just going straight up. Straight up. Again, this is the kind of gold. They're just kind of comparing it. And of course, you got dollar liabilities, external dollar liabilities. None of those things really matter. They're complicated to explain to people. They don't matter. I mean, the rest of these charts are showing people. I mean, when I say they don't matter, I don't mean it's an irrelevant number. I'm just saying, once you understand the concept and you see what's going on here, right? Same kind of thing. Gold is another one of these things. Federal dollars, receipts and outlays, just continuing to climb. Just climb. Just government just growing insanely. And that ends in 2018. Imagine what it looks like today, just straight up. See, this is 4,000. That top line is 4,000 is the one where the line intersects. The very top line is 5,000. Well, we already spent more than 5,000 just in the first few 5,000 billion, of course. So that's 5 trillion at the top line. We've already spent more than that. Joking Joe with his dementia has already spent more than that this year. So this is basically just a straight up line. Here's the S&P 500. Like I said, the public markets are a scam. They're all a scam. The PE ratio, those things are made up. The earnings themselves are all manipulated through GAAP rules, generally accepting accounting principles. It's just a manipulated load of shit. Basically, all the public markets are just a scam on the people. I've learned that through years and years of being beaten up by those markets and looking into them. And all the rules, they don't apply them. The Department of Justice, the SEC, all these things are just there to protect the scam. They're not there to do what people believe. They're just not. Schiller PE ratio, again, not really stuff that anything matters. Working hours, look at this. You're just going to work more and more and more. There's another in effect inflation figure. Look how huge it is. I mean, you're talking about from being able to buy the S&P 500 in 1970 for like about 30 average working hours. Now it's 120. What does that mean? That means that all those people who are in these public markets who are just drawing down money and getting stock options and manipulating, that's just a gigantic way to manipulate. Most of these companies never make any real money. They announce things like revenues and earnings and all this crap. It's really not. It's all just games. And what ends up happening most of the time, these S&P, anybody can look and see all the companies that come in and out of the S&P 500, even 100. And they turn over all the time because they go out of business. Most people are unaware that the Dow itself is constantly manipulated. They just take companies out when they underperform, and then they act as though this is a steady, constant average that you can use to compare. You can't. This S&P is no different. It's no different. The S&P, if you actually showed all the companies that had ever made the S&P 500, this thing would go to the roof because most of them are bankrupt. They're gone. It's shit. See, people don't know this. It's just because financial news is probably about one of the few areas that's actually more fraudulent than legal news. Here's another great one. Futures trading. Look at that. That ends in 1985, that chart. I would go through my ceiling if you probably had that thing. Everything's being traded as futures. Futures are another way to speculate and scam. That's all. That's why they have this Bitcoin digital futures markets and stuff. That's just how I'm telling you. It's how you know that things totally controlled. This is like financial scam. During the 80s, they did all those roll-ups, 80s and 90s. They did roll-ups, these financialization. It was another way to take out small, privately owned businesses. They did, quote, roll-ups. They got public money. They went out and bought them all up. I remember Blockbuster was formed like that. They went around and bought all these mom and pop video stores up. They've done it a million different ways. They put it into one thing. They just use public fake money. They pay themselves all these huge bonuses and everything else for supposedly hitting all these made-up targets. And what usually ends up happening is the companies then end up going bankrupt. It's just a way to loot the public and to pay off the people who take shit public. That's all it is. It's all it is. Fees and scams from lawyers and investment banks that do all this stuff. It's all just insider shit. That's all. It doesn't mean that you can't make money by owning some stuff. You can, but it's just a complete scam. The vast majority of it's total scams. That's all. And people just, they don't want to admit that. They don't want to accept that. And the people on radio or so-called constitutional conservatives, they never discuss any of this. They just act like it's a free market. Oh, I'm a free market and all this. It's just fantasy. See, if you look into it, most people have no idea. For all I know, the things I'm saying, people don't even know what I'm talking about. Obviously there's plenty of very sophisticated people here on my Patreon account, but there's other people who are just kind of, they understand, but they're not really sophisticated in some of these things. There's no shame in that. It takes a long time to learn this stuff. Most people aren't interested in it. And they count on that. They know that about people. So speculation, that's all it is. Personal savings rate, of course, that's collapsing. How the hell can you save anything? Everything's so damn expensive and nobody makes any damn money. Net savings just collapsing. How the hell are you going to save with the numbers we're looking at, right? You can't. And they keep everybody so busy. The system is not, it's not accidental, see? It's not accidental. Here's the trade balance. You can see how it just basically went negative in 1970s. Okay, and another thing that happened in that very same time frame when Nixon took us off the gold standard officially, he also went and opened up China. He opened up China. The Republicans love to run around and talk about, oh, China this, China comes that, and all this. Fucking Nixon had opened it. You think that was a coincidence? See, if you still think something like that was a coincidence, then I just don't know how to get through to you. I showed you the show about the culture, and now you're showing this one with the money. And I'm telling you, when they reopened China, so-called, and now what happens? Now we buy most of the kind of rare earth minerals and things we need for our so-called military defense against China from China. How is that credible? How do people accept this? Why do constitutional conservatives ignore this? It's just right out there. See, they're the worst kind of controlled opposition. That's what they are. More trade balance, you can just see collapsing since the 1971 little red circle. It's collapsing. Cost of a barrel of oil is irrelevant. That's a totally manipulated event that they're ready to get rid of. Interest rates for years and years, like 100 years, is silly. This is an energy use. Again, none of this stuff really matters. You can look at it if you want. Ideological, who cares? Political speech is simpler. Of course, the people are getting stupider. Of course they are. Presidential elections, who cares? Number of pages in the Federal Register, not really that great a use, even though it has climbed dramatically. There's many other ways, not just in the Federal Register, that this kind of local and other kinds of regulatory things, that's not a direct result right there. You can't draw that one-to-one. It's still way up. I mean, obviously it just skyrocketed, but again, kind of, if you're not a lawyer, you don't really understand that. With cloture voting in the Senate, who cares? It's just, like that thing's a scam, right? They show it's basically flat for a long time and it's exploded, right? Because the government's just running roughshod over everybody, while the Republicans and the constitutional conservatives run around continuing to talk about voting because they are controlled opposition designed to keep you screwed. Here's another one. This is the materialism. The green line is being very well off financially as an essential objective in your life. That's how important it's become. See, just everything has become materialized. That's 2015. Imagine what's happened since then. Just straight up. 95%. What's that next generation of kids who are watching YouTube videos, want to be a YouTube star and all this crap, and think they're going to be a rapper or some bullshit, play professional sports? Right? The blue line that's going straight down is developing a meaningful philosophy of life. It's just completely collapsed. They used to be completely reversed, and now they're completely reversed. This is what I'm saying. None of this stuff is an accident. See, none of this stuff is an accident. The reason people don't see it is because the stuff takes so long, which I tried to explain to them in one of my shows where I tried to discuss the fact these things are, 50 years, 25, 50 years, that's nothing. That's a short-term goal for the people who run us, but it's an entire lifetime, a whole working life for most people. So they can't figure it out. See, they can't figure it out, and nobody in media talks about it. Here's the schooling. Spending on schooling is the blue line going straight up. The math scores and the reading scores and all that stuff, that's the flat line at the bottom. So they're just spending more and more and more and more stupid money. The dotted line is the staff per student. Why? Because government and regulations and bullshit. Okay, just making people stupider and stupider. Here's the number of lawyers per population. 1970, it just starts skyrocketing. It just starts skyrocketing. Why? Because it's like I said, it's all a scam now. It's simply all a scam, and it's becoming so hyper insanely a scam at this point that it's hard to even recognize it. I know I've done a show or so and talked about how there's nothing legitimate going on outside someone who's a plumber or actually put something together. Most jobs, they're totally unnecessary. And that's why I'm convinced there's not going to be very many people, because most of the stuff people are doing is totally unnecessary, doesn't need to be done, and in fact is just driving all this insanity. So, incarceration rate, this is a very interesting one too. So the war on drugs was started almost the exact same time, back there in the early 70s. Yeah, right? Look what happened. Well, they do. They just start putting everybody in prison. Right? What are the number one things you look at? Drugs, okay? You've got money laundering, weapons charges, and so-called gang-related activity or terror. That's what that most so-called law enforcement, most of that shit is all made up. See, drugs, money laundering, and those things aren't even real crimes. Those are just made up crimes. They only exist because they have to crack down on the money laundering, because money laundering is what they're in the process of doing. They're a huge money laundering criminal enterprise government system, this government private system. They work with these banks. And so they don't want any competition. But the vast majority of these things, gun crimes, that's the Second Amendment issue. They want to bust these people. They say you can't have a gun, you can't do it. You're trading in guns. Well, that's what Eric Holder was doing. See, so they're just putting everybody into prisons to get everybody a so-called record. And then you're stuck in there. I saw this the other day, that more kids living with their parents than since the Depression. God only knows. Again, this thing ends in 2020. Imagine what it skyrocketed to. They show 52% now in 2020, in July. Probably keeps going up. Median age of the first marriage. Here's another one I talked about. See, they're trying to get women to have kids later and later, because it's very difficult for lots of them. And then they blow the thing apart with the divorces and the insanity that they've already run into it. And all these things are designed to create a society that's totally unworkable, that the government can just manipulate and divide, while the people at the top just rake off all the stuff. They buy up all the assets with all their fake usury horse shit, while the people are standing around with no idea what's going on, driving this whole, businesswoman crap. Years ago, I stopped dating businesswomen. Can't stand it. So there you go. Look at that. Now it's men not getting married till 30. Women are almost the same. I saw a number the other day that the average age for the woman in New York and San Francisco, their first child, is like 31 or 32 years old. That is not a society that's going to survive. See, it's never going to work. Divorce percentage, look at this, since 1971, I already told you guys in 70, they brought in the no-fault divorce, and look what happened. In the 18 to 34, it kind of shot up, and then it kind of flattened, but look at the others, 45, from 45 up, wow. And that's been consistent with mine. Same with 35, just skyrocket. And I've seen all sorts of other numbers that are even more damaging. That's only runs through 2016, but this pretty much everybody in the urban area is divorced. Virtually, so many women they're remarried or divorced and they have kids and a single mom. They're trying to get by. That's all being driven by all this stuff, all of it. Look at this one. Percentage of children born to unwed women. Look at that skyrocketing. I mean, look at that. That's down from around 0 up to 28, 40, 52, and 72% for blacks. I don't understand how blacks are okay with this. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. They just have some of the worst, most outrageous people who supposedly lead them. Most black people are really, I think, ultimately very conservative. Their culture, and it was doing great until, the 60s, and then they started really wrecking it. They've really taken it to the blacks. I mean, my God, how the hell is a society going to survive with 72% unwed mothers having kids? How? I don't get it. I mean, that's not going to work, see? And they know that at the top. This is obesity, This obesity is just, again, all part of the same thing with the GMOs and the fake food, and all the different crap, and the latchkey kids, and just go through the list. All the stupid fast food they've brought out, fake food, every ad, more food on every corner. They act like a family dinner is going to KFC and bringing home a bucket of chicken. That's a woman cooking now. That's a family dinner. Some garbage like that. It's just unbelievable. These numbers. It's crazy. National health expenditures. Again, it's a completely faked up number, but look at the numbers. Look how insane it is. That's the U.S. population, very steady, right? Look at the numbers, though. It's just going through the roof. Why? Combination of inflation and people who are just sick all the time. They're just all sick. And here we are. Growth in physicians and administrators. The physicians, the brown line at the bottom. There's nothing there. What happens? Federal government, all these regulations and all this stupid shit. And now doctors are just process workers. And it's gotten worse because that's 2009. It just kind of keeps climbing because they've got all these, quote, best practices, and they've driven everybody in these huge practices. Very difficult to be an independent physician now. They want to make sure those are all gone. So you just have to be an employee, follow the instructions. They're not really your patients. Basically, the entire business practices medicine. And again, everyone just seems to be fine with it. But it just doesn't matter, you know? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's amazing to me. It's a fascinating place. People can go look at it if they want. But I just wanted to do a show about it because I didn't want to just post it. I didn't want to just post a link. I thought I would talk about it a little bit because it's just, there's a lot of stuff there. And there's other things you can look at. And you can compare some of these other things if you want. But I've always been interested in this. This is something my buddies and I have talked about for a long time. There's a funny meme series called Old Economy Steve with this funny blonde guy. Old Economy Steve memes are great. I used to really love them. Got a big kick out of them. You might look them up if you've never heard of them. So, well, anyway, I just thought I would do that, and I hope this was entertaining or helpful for people. It's pretty amazing, and there's just so many moving pieces that people are unaware of. So, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. I really appreciate you guys here on Patreon, and it's clear it's going to take a while. We're going to have to percolate along. A lot of it's just pure time, just so the message can kind of get out there. And if it doesn't get out there, it doesn't. But at least we're here, and we've got a band of very elite people in here that I appreciate who get it. And I'm glad to have you. So, okay, take care.